vorne bitten darf. Thank you very much, Zoran. Surprisingly, you gave your talk in English, but I think this is, will help us a little. I'm going to summarize now these three papers, trying to point out the things they have in common, and afterwards I will open the discussion and you can pose your questions in German or English. Yes, and I will ask you for the fitting language, so to speak. As we heard from Zoran, again we have to highlight the unexpectedness of the events of 1918, the relative unexpectedness of the events of 1918, the breakdown of Austria-Hungary and the emergence of some so-called national states, which can be described better than a sort of nationality states, all of them. So we have on the one hand a post-colonial situation, on the other hand we face the continuity of this system of multi-ethnic, multi-confessional, multilingual, multicultural settings, as not only but very prominent underlined Peter Judson in his path-breaking book. We have got to know some regional hotspots like the Banat, where the interest of Yugoslavia, Romania and Hungary clashed in a sword. So this is on the one hand a very interesting spot to find common interest. On the other hand, for example, the Dobruča. You just mentioned it once, but I think the Dobruča is a very interesting region, a sort of laboratory for Romania, how to practice a sort of centralism, colonialism before World War I, and then put into practice in the next regions after 1918. War is not over in 1918. This is one of the things we just mentioned aside. I just mentioned here the Romanian-Hungarian War, Pars pro Toto, which lasted until the summer of 1919. So while in Paris nations took place, war was still reality in many regions of Southeastern and Central Eastern Europe. We talked about hidden minorities. So my question would be, aren't confessional minorities also a sort of hidden minority? Because then we would have to call the Unitarians in Romania as a sort of minority, even though they are Romanians. We should have a closer glance on the local level, because I think there is a big difference of what the legal framework offers on the one hand and what on the local level happens in reality. In Romania there is a quite clear situation with a sort of semi-official state religion, the Orthodox one, while in Yugoslavia and Hungary things are not that clear, because there are at least 2 or 3 dominant confessions in the dominant ethnicity. We should mention the minority treaties, all the minority treaties, which were sound of a kind of precondition for the very peace treaties to be signed. Without that minority treaties, there wouldn't have existed any peace treaty with the countries. And yes, maybe we should question the content of these treaties compared with reality in the 1920s and 30s. There is a big cleavage between the legislation and praxis. This is to be highlighted in all your papers. And it is interesting that in Romania, even though the situation of the minorities wasn't you called it sort of paradise, I suppose,
Yeah,
something like this.
I got from the Romanian Academy of Social History.
But compared with Yugoslavia and Hungary, it was indeed a better situation, as we know from our documents in Geneva. Yes.
They are highlighting also this, but I have mind.
Yes, there is the Jewish question. The Jewish question is one for all of these national states. I think we should talk a little bit about them, even though I know this is they are not perceived as a national minority in some cases, but in some cases they do, as the Hungarian Jewish population in Romania after 1980. Yes, and I'll misuse my position to pose the first question to all of you, because I think we should talk about this before we go into the discussion. I think we neglected a little bit. This is the issue of the king states of the minorities. So could you please lose a few words on the king states, the Mutterländer of the most important minorities in your countries? Bitte, ja genau. Also es geht um die Mutterländer der deutschen Minderheit, vor allem in Ungarn. Vielleicht, wenn du beginnst, bitte kurz die Beziehung herstellen zu diesen doch sehr, sehr wichtigen internationalen Playern. Da kommen wir nämlich insgesamt ein bisschen zur Frage der Verflechtungsgeschichte.
Also, um ehrlich zu sein, wenn wir den Nationalismus oder die Nationalitätenpolitik eines Staates untersuchen, dann müssten wir mindestens auf 3 Aktoren konzentrieren, also Beker natürlich. Also von einem Aktor habe ich gesprochen, von dem ungarischen Staat. Der zweite Aktor sind die Minderheiten selbst. Und der dritte Aktor, die dritten Akteure sind die Mutterländer, meistens. Also was Ungarn betrifft, muss ich sagen, dass nur Deutschland eine Wirkung auf die Gestaltung der ungarischen Nationalitäten ausgeübt hat. Nur Deutschland war in der Lage, das zu machen, und nach der zweiten Hälfte der 30er Jahre vor allem. Warum? Also die anderen Staaten, es gab eine sehr große Asymmetrie, was die Bevölkerungszahl, die zu der Nationalität gehörende Bevölkerungszahl betrifft. In Rumänien lebten 1,8 Millionen Ungarn, so ungefähr. Und in Ungarn 20.000 Rumänen zum Beispiel. Also es lohnt sich einfach nicht, zum Beispiel für Rumänien für das Schicksal der Rumänen zu kämpfen. Also zu großen Preis sollte man, hätte man dafür zahlen müssen. Und das ist auch mit Jugoslawien der Fall. Dort gab es einige Versuche 1926 und später direkt vor dem Zweiten Weltkrieg. Aber diese waren nur auf Papier oder diese waren nur in Gesprächen. Deutschland hatte allein Möglichkeit. Und Deutschland unterstützte sehr stark die deutsche Minderheit, natürlich insgeheim, von Anfang an, also von 1921 in immer größerem Maße. Aber als King State trat Deutschland sehr lange nicht auf. Erst direkt vor dem Zweiten Weltkrieg, 1938, aber in Wirklichkeit seit 1940 war Deutschland in der Lage, einen echt großen Einfluss auf Ungarn auszuüben in dieser Frage.
Danke. Du hattest es ja auf der Folie, und das gilt auch für die anderen beiden Länder, behaupte ich jetzt mal, die Beziehungen, die zwischenstaatlichen Beziehungen zwischen Deutschland und Rumänien, Bulgarien und Ungarn waren wichtiger als die jeweilige deutsche Minderheit vor Ort. Also deswegen auch dieses späte Einsetzen des Kümmerns, des konkreten Kümmerns um die lokale Minderheit. Es ging einfach viel mehr um Ressourcen, Erdöl und eine strategische Ausrichtung, denke ich.
Okay, there are two types of German minority in Romania. There is the German-speaking minority in Transylvania, Banat, so in all the provinces that used to belong to the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. And their reference to Germany is not that obvious. Many of them were more linked to Austria than Germany. So Germany's influence in Romania actually came on the same time, at the second part of the 1930s. But there is also a minority in Romania, in southern Bessarabia. The former German-speaking minority in Russia. They weren't linked at all with the Germans in Bukovina or in Transylvania. And actually they were very loyal to the Romanian state. And at the beginning of 1920s, they assisted the Romanian army and the Romanian administration in their fight against communism and the neighboring Soviet conflicts. But after the agrarian reform, they were considered big landowners. And actually the Romanian state alienated this minority by confiscating their lands and then forcing them to teach Romanian into schools. They had their own schools entirely funded by their communities. So the Romanian state destroyed this, interfered so much in these communities that they were the first victim of Nazi influence, more earlier than the rest of the Germans. This is an example of how it worked. But actually the Germany's political influence came at the end of after 1939, after 1940 in power.
Maybe we have to talk a little bit about this later on, but thank you again. You're dwelling on a very, very important point. This is loyalty to the state, not to the nation, but to the state. And this is, I think, a very important issue when we talk about a minority. Thank you.
Yes, I have mentioned it very briefly in my paper that the concessions the minorities were granted were caused by foreign political or party political reasons. So, for instance, Italy was perceived as the main enemy of Yugoslavia and had to be appeased by all means. Among others, tiny Italian minority on the Adriatic coast was granted the Italian schools with Italian teachers from Italy, Italian school books and so on, which almost 500,000 of Albanians or Germans or Hungarians couldn't have. With Romania as an ally, some convention about the churches and schools in the Banat was somehow painfully negotiated. And as for Germans, they were given certain concessions in the Vojvodina in the early 20s when the government wanted to separate them from the Hungarians. And then again in the early 30s as Yugoslavia sought better relations with Germany. And the stumbling block in these relations between Germany was the position of the German minority. So Yugoslavia made certain small concessions like opening the private teachers training college, which was against the law actually, a private German gymnasium that was also against the law, so as to show goodwill towards Germany in order to establish better relations.
Financed by Germany?
No, these institutions were partly financed by the German minority itself and partly by the Yugoslav government, donations of the Yugoslav government. So, as I said, it had very much to do with foreign policy. Hungarians practically got no concessions because the relationships between Yugoslavia and Hungary were always more or less bad. And only in 1940, when the relations improved, were Hungarians granted the permission to found a cultural association that would encompass all their cultural associations and so on. But that happened practically in the end, and had very little effect in the end.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. To complete the explanation of my colleague, we have a third category of German in Romania. This category represents the German who inhabited Romania before the war. They are not so much alt-Romanian, the old Romania, so not the German coming from Transylvania or the German,
for example, the king.
in the kingdom of Romania. And they were not so numerous, but very active in society. They have organization, they were religious communities before the war and during the war. They are living in the middle of the Romanian majorities, which it was very conflictual in the past, especially in the war. Most of them were interned in the camps for civil prisoners during the war. They were after the war, they come back to remain in Romania. They came back in the cities, in the great cities, in Bucharest, in Iași, in Constanța, in Craiova, in Ploiești, for example. There are small communities from the German population before the war. They were very strong connected with Germany, like German citizens, most of them. So not German from Transylvania, but German from the old kingdom.
They were economic migrants or I don't know, descendants of economic migrants. Yeah, they did also this.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for the 3 papers. I have a short comment and I have 2 questions. The comment has 2 parts. First of all, I think it's very important that we see that we have 2 different periods into the interwar period regarding the policy of these 3 states we are talking about, regarding the minority question. Therefore, I think it's very important that we make a clear differentiation between the 1920s and the period afterwards. I think it would be a mistake to look at the minority question of the 20s only by the lenses of the 40s and 30s. You know, therefore, I plea very much for differentiating at least two periods into the interwar period regarding exactly to the minority policy. The second one is, I think, also of general interest is the question of definition. And if we're looking at the definition given by the League of Nations, then the League of Nations doesn't speak about national minorities. The League of Nations speaks about ethnic, lingual, minority of faith, and so on. So, if we are looking at the sources of the time, I think we should not only have in mind what the national states called national minorities, because here is a big differentiation. That's my comment. Now the question. The first question is the question I have to Ferenc Eiler. Herr Eiler, es ist doch interessant, bemerkenswert zu sehen, dass von diesen 3 Staaten, die wir uns hier anschauen, die Ungarn der Staat war mit dem geringsten Anteil an Minderheiten. Wenn wir jetzt aber auch nur zugrunde legen, was heute vorgetragen wurde, merken wir, dass Ungarn offensichtlich, ich sage jetzt mal etwas zugespitzt, am repressivsten gegen seine Minderheiten umgegangen ist. Das ist finde ich ein Stück weit bemerkenswert, und wenn man es bemerkenswert findet, dann ist es erforderlich, dass man eine mögliche Erklärung dafür findet. So short in English, comparing the three states, we see that in Hungary we have the lowest percentage of minorities, but on the basis of what we heard in the three papers, it seems that Hungary have the most repressive policy towards its minorities. And if that is correct, then it is of course necessary to have a certain explication on this phenomenon. The second question is to Zoran Janjetović. I would be interested to know if there are any interrelation between the integration of all the new regions in the new kingdom, and of course the different populations on the one side, on the other side, how to deal with minorities. Because that was a process that went parallel. And the question is, how did the new authority, how did the new state react in the one case, and how did he react in the other case? And the last question, and the question for all, it was mentioned, the minority treaties were mentioned. None of the papers did mention that, but it seems to me that the minority treaties and the League of Nations would be a very good instrument to compare the minority policies of the three countries. Why? Because the minorities, and explicitly individual persons, could claim for their rights at the minority section of the League of Nations. And if we are looking at the figures we have for each of the three countries, these figures are very different. Maybe you could tell us something a little bit more about that, and of course, I think very shortly.
Ja, Eiler, fangen wir mit Ihnen an. Bitte.
Also, das ist nicht einfach zu erklären. Es gibt verschiedene Ursachen dafür. Erstens, zu dieser Zeit hat sie, also ein bisschen schon früher, aber zu dieser Zeit mit Sicherheit hat sich der ungarische Nationalitätenbegriff geändert. Davon hat mein Kollege am Vormittag gesprochen. Früher sprach man von dem einheitlichen politischen ungarischen Nation. Das bedeutete, dass alle Staatsbürger von Ungarn zu den Ungarn gehören, also zu den Magyaren gehören. Das hat sich geändert. Das hat sich schon angefangen zu ändern am Anfang am Jahrtausendwende, um ehrlich zu sein. Aber nach der Niederlage konzentrierten sich die ungarischen Regierungen eindeutig auf die kulturelle Ebene. Also wenn jemand Ungarisch sprach und die ungarische Kultur, für die ungarische Kultur schwärmte oder wie man sich das aussuchen kann, dann kann man ein Ungar sein. Sonst aber nicht. Das war eine sehr große Schwierigkeit für Ungarn, muss ich sagen, weil Ungarn auch die Deutschen in Rumänien zurückbekommen wollte, und für sie konnte man damit natürlich nicht argumentieren. Das war ein Jahresgesicht. Das wollte Ungarn eigentlich mit Macht erreichen, mit der Unterstützung von Deutschland. Aber es gibt noch ein anderes Argument, und das ist auch damit zusammenhängt. Also die ungarische Öffentlichkeit war davon überzeugt nach dem Ersten Weltkrieg, dass Ungarn den Großteil des Gebietes wegen den Minderheiten, nationalen Minderheiten verloren hatte, weil sie einfach nicht also gegen Ungarn gewotet haben eigentlich. Und die Rumänen zum Beispiel, die rumänische Bevölkerung von Ungarn, haben deklariert, dass sie zu Rumänien kommen möchten. Die Südslawen, Kroaten, Serben, Teile der Niedersachsen auch das Gleiche getan haben und noch dazu auch ein Teil der Deutschen. Es wurde nicht nachgefragt, warum die Deutschen dafür gewotet haben. Natürlich, also eigentlich hatten die Sachsen recht, natürlich, also sie hatten keine andere Wahl, muss man sagen. Und die Banater Deutschen warteten ein bisschen ab. Aber mit der Zeit hatten sie auch keine andere Wahl mehr. Also es war eine feste Überzeugung in der politischen Elite in Ungarn, dass nur ein kulturell homogener Staat zu überleben fähig ist.
Indeed, it was really very, very tall order to put all these different territories with different cultures, histories, traditions, and so on together. And also Yugoslav peoples, South Slav peoples who live there. And of course, the national minorities complicated the picture even more. The problem was that the Europe of those days was a Europe of nation states. So, shortly put, nationalism was all the rage, all over the place. So the same was also in Yugoslavia. I've already described how the minorities were seen as intruders, renegades, foreign colonists, and so on. So someone who actually doesn't belong there. In other words, the Yugoslav or South Slav intellectual and political elites did not actually accept Yugoslavia for what it was, and it was a multi-ethnic country. Well, that was bad, of course, but when you look around Europe, as I said, no one else was capable of doing that. However, it was the communists in the Second World War, or since mid-30s, so to say, who realized that Yugoslavia was not a nation state, but a multi-ethnic state. And one had to find a way how to keep that multi-ethnic state together. And they thought they found the key by giving each nationality ethnic rights and so on and so on. I think that was the right way to go, but it seems in the early 1920s, even late 1930s, the society, the politicians, the intellectuals, they were not ready for such a solution, which was, to my mind, it's obvious, but as I said, I hope we are smarter than they have been.
Thank you very much. Gut, zweite Runde, second round, please. Zur zweiten Frage vielleicht noch. The claims.
No, I have to answer. First of all, I want to clarify something about this. I agree with the fact that in the 20s was better than in the 30s, definitely.
I don't think that it was better, but it was different.
It was different, indeed, not in a way, okay. But at least from the beginning of the 20th century, the meaning of democracy was basically the same as today. So actually, the main problem of this country was the lack of democracy, the lack of basic rights, or the lack of basic rights for minorities. So that I think this is the main problem. Second, with the Treaty of Minorities. Yes, indeed, I think I said something about the Treaty of Minorities. Romania was the last country to sign the Treaty of Minorities after a huge political scandal with the government resigning and being replaced by be replaced by a statement by a politician from Transylvania, actually, and he signed the treaty. It was the last country to sign it in December 1919. And if you look there, I got somewhere, there is a historian in Cluj who wrote a paper about how many complaints were made that the League of Nations